made a decision to say yes to myself. I said, I have to try. And it was that key phrase right there, I have to try, that really got me into CRNA school. Okay. And so I hope you just got goosebumps because it's just really that simple. You have to try. And I knew back then, if I didn't try, set it as my hard goal to get straight A's, that I wouldn't get straight A's. I had to physically believe I could. I knew that if I had any doubt in my mind that I could achieve this, then I wouldn't achieve it. I'm Jenny Finnell, CRNA and founder of CRNA School Prep Academy. I have always had a passion for helping those who aspire to become a CRNA. A couple of years ago, I started mentoring a handful of prospective students. Fast forward to today, and I have a successful mentoring program that has impacted hundreds of aspiring and now current nurse anesthesia students. What I enjoy the most in my business is connecting with you, the future CRNA. I love learning and growing with you. The road to CRNA is full of unique challenges, and no two journeys are the same. But every journey has a learning opportunity. I'm here to share what I have learned over the years from not just my students, but CRNA community leaders, program faculty, and from my time as a practicing CRNA. This will be your one-stop shop to get the mentoring you need to not only guide you into this career path, but support you all the way through to graduation day. So if you're a nursing student who's exploring the possibility, an ICU nurse actively pursuing CRNA, or a current nurse anesthesia student, you're in the right place. Tune in for inspiration and actionable takeaways that will help you from start to finish. Let's get started. Well, hello, future CRNA. Welcome back to CRNA School Prep Academy podcast. I'm your host, Jenny Finnell, CRNA and founder of CRNA School Prep Academy. So I'm really honored and grateful to share my journey to become a CRNA. I hope it helps you out there kind of come to terms with your own journey. And really, ultimately, I know that there's going to be some of you who this can really relate to, because I'm sure I'm not alone in some of the challenges I went through in the beginning around wrapping my brain around becoming a CRNA. So let's go ahead and get into today's episode. Essentially, kind of like the long story short is I did not always know I wanted to become a CRNA. I was not someone in high school that was like, I'm going to be a CRNA. You know, that wasn't me early on. And, but I always knew I wanted to do something in the medical field because I was very interested in medicine. I used to watch Discovery Health and the surgery shows on TV, and I just always found it really fascinating. I did a lot of volunteering over my summers. Thanks, Dad. Like, that was a mandatory. You have to volunteer this summer. So I did every summer for 3 years in a row. I volunteered at the hospital. And because of that, it kind of allowed me to expose myself to different areas, different specialties. And so I toyed with the idea of becoming a physical therapist, becoming a radiologist, becoming a surgeon. Yeah, I really didn't know what. I just knew I liked medical, right? So I did have a shadow experience in the OR in high school, although at the time I had no idea what a CRNA was, had no clue. But I liked being in the OR. I thought that was a lot of fun, right? And so at the time I was like, ooh, being a surgeon would be really cool. But then I was like, I don't know if I'm smart enough for that. Plus, that's literally what I thought. And I also thought, well, this is me limiting beliefs, little Jenny, can you really have a family and be a surgeon? Like, I don't know if I can make it through med school and still start the family I want to start, and the cost of going to medical school and the cost, and I don't know if I can hold my bladder for that long, if I have a long case. These are the things that I'm thinking about when I'm in high school. I don't know if I have a strong enough bladder to be a surgeon. And I, equally thought that maybe it wouldn't be as easy for me to have a family as a woman, right? So long story short, I kind of just toyed with, maybe, but I don't know. You start college and you have to pick a major. And I started at Ohio State, and my major was rad tech, a radiology technician. Holy cow, you guys, I'm so glad. Literally a week into my college career, I changed my major to nursing. And at the time, I wish I could remember what I was thinking or what made me shift. The only thing I can remember from that early time was the fact that I kind of got this gut feeling that the rad tech was not going to be a long-standing, enjoyable position. I think x-ray is cool. I like interpreting x-ray. I think it's really fascinating. but I equally didn't like the idea of being around radiation all day long. And then I was like, and then if I want to do something else with it, that's really all I can do. I can't do anything else. And I like variety. Like, I'm not someone, don't get me wrong, I like consistency, but I equally like variety. I like challenges. I know I'm someone who thrives with a difficult situation. I mean, I thrive when you put me in a situation where I don't know what I'm doing. It sounds kind of weird to say, but I know I enjoy it. It keeps me kind of like, ooh, I got to figure this out, right? Like it's almost like a puzzle, right? I got to figure this out. And I just felt like it would be really monotonous and boring to do the same thing for my entire career, just, as a rad tech. So that's what ultimately led me to pick nursing, because I thought, well, there are lots of options in nursing. Like, I could be any kind of nurse. I can subspecialize. I can go to grad school. Like, let's do that, because now at least I have more options, right? So I made that pivot to nursing, and I'm really glad I did. But at the time, again, CRNA was not on my radar. I did know what a CRNA was. I had heard of it, and I thought it sounded super cool. But I equally remember being like, you're not smart enough for that, Jenny. Like, you'll never become a CRNA. Like, only the smartest people go to CRNA school. Like, that's literally what I thought as a little, freshman in college who picked nursing as their degree. Now, mind you, that first year in my college rocked me. I didn't get into the College of Nursing because I didn't have good enough grades. And it was devastating. And, if those of you who follow my podcast for a while, I've shared a little bit about my background as a child. But I struggled in school, in grade school. High school was a little bit better, but in grade school mostly, I struggled like a lot. I was put in like remedial courses, all kinds of tutoring, multiple IQ tests, try to figure out what was wrong with me, right? And as a young child, I remember thinking, well, gosh, they keep sending me this IQ test. It must mean I'm stupid, right? They must think I'm stupid. And that's literally what I thought. I found out later on as even an adult, unfortunately, I was in high school, that my teacher finally pointed out that I have dyslexia. Like, I have a mild form of dyslexia. I'm not like, I can function, right? But that has always been something that has caused me more difficulty with like standardized learning, right? With standardized tests and methods of learning. It just doesn't work for me. My brain doesn't function that way. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's okay. In fact, some of the smartest people in the world are people who have said they've had struggle with dyslexia because they figure out another way. They have to, because traditional ways don't work. So they're really resourceful. And I think that's honestly how it's aided in my success, is because I became resourceful, but only out of essentially facing failure over and over and over again, right? And so all that being said, I got to college, rocked me, right? Where I was like, boom, like, okay, I barely had a 3.1, getting into College of Nursing, and I had two choices. I had a choice to go home and live with my parents, no thank you, or figure out and stay at Ohio State, but I have to get straight A's if I'm ever gonna get my GPA up high enough to get into College of Nursing. I had never gotten straight A's, ever. And that was really a pivotal moment for me in my life, because I made a decision. I made a decision to say yes to myself. I said, I have to try. And it was that key phrase right there, I have to try, that really got me into CRNA school, okay? And so I hope you just got goosebumps, because it's just really that simple. You have to try. And I knew, back then I knew if I didn't try, set it as my hard goal to get straight A's, that I wouldn't get straight A's. I had to physically believe I could. I knew that if I had any doubt in my mind that I could achieve this, then I wouldn't achieve it. Because historically what I did as a child is I did that to myself, meaning, well, I won't be able to get A's because I'm not capable, because I'm just slower. I'm a slower reader. I've never gotten a single spelling bee because I cannot spell. I'm still terrible at spelling. Like, cool. I had all these beliefs of like, it's not capable for me. Like, I don't have it in me to do it. And I, from a young age, thought my brain was just different. I thought I just was not meant to be that smart straight A student because I just was wired differently. My brain was not capable of it. And it's just so not true. And so when I got to that pivotal point in my college career where I was like, I have to try. I have to figure this out. I've got to challenge myself to figure this out. Let's figure this out. Let's freaking do it. Because I'm not going home to live with my parents. I love you, Mom and Dad. Don't get me wrong. But at the time, I loved Ohio State. I now married to my now husband of 12 years, but I had met him my freshman year in college, and I was already like completely infatuated with him. Like, I was always, I didn't know we were going to get married, but I was like, I'm not leaving my Prince Charming in college. Like, I have to figure out how to stay here. And so I wanted it really bad, you guys. Like, I wanted to stay at Ohio State, and I had a good group of girlfriends. They're still my good friends. In fact, we're getting ready to go on a girls trip. Whoop, whoop. I'm so excited. But they've been my friends since freshman year in college. It was like the universe opened. I found my dream man. I found like my girls for life, and I didn't want to leave, right? So I had a lot of motivation to be like, I got to figure this out. I got to figure out how to get straight A's. So long story short, I tried every study technique I could find on Google. I tried everything. I just kept trying different ways, and testing and trying and going to every office hour, every tea hour, I would sit in the front of the room. I would ask questions. I would stay after class. I was an annoying student who never left the professor alone because I knew I had to try something else because what I was traditionally doing, which was trying to just do what everyone else is doing, was not working. And it worked. It worked. I got straight A's. And so here's what my brain did, though. This is why I'm sharing this backstory with you guys, because I want you to recognize if you're doing this to yourself. Because I knew I was doing this to myself, but it took years for me to realize what that did to me mentally. So I got straight A's, right? I was really excited and really proud of myself for getting straight A's. But here's what I did. And this is where I want to catch some of you if you're doing it. I remember telling myself, and then I got into the College of Nursing that second time I applied. But when I got into College of Nursing, I suffered from imposter syndrome because I felt like I didn't belong there. I felt like I wasn't truly smart enough still to be in the College of Nursing because I did get rejected because I had never been that great student, but somehow I got straight A's. And I remember feeling like, that straight A student, that's not who I am. I'm not that straight A student. I am Jenny. I am the slow one. I am the one who needs a slower reading group and math group and, someone who's questioned all the time if I'm actually have a low IQ or what's wrong with me. Why can't I get good grades, right? And so I had this imposter syndrome when I went into the College of Nursing that I really didn't belong. And I remember thinking I faked it. I remember thinking I just faked my way in here. I cheated. I remember thinking, and even though I didn't cheat, I never cheated. But I took easier courses like how to avoid getting cancer and exercise science. But I equally took some hard courses. Like I took biology, I took algebra. Because I took some easy courses, knowing that they'd probably be easier A's, I told myself I truly didn't deserve those straight A's because they weren't the harder classes, right? I told myself because I didn't, the harder classes I still struggled in. And so I got straight A's, but they were in easy classes. So I poo-pooed my own achievement. And I'm like, why would I do that? Like, and even like me, Jenny, today is like, what? Why would I do that? And that in itself was this toxic loop that I found myself in forevermore. And even though I was doing well for the first time, and I honestly, you guys, the fact that I figured out how to study, I continued on my nursing journey and did really well in school. It wasn't easy, but I got gritty that year when I had to get straight A's, and I figured it out, and I kept that same effort throughout the rest of my time and ended up finishing really strong. I graduated with a 3.7 GPA overall. Science GPA was a 3.4. But that being said, I always felt this imposter syndrome that I was still not that smart student, even though I stuck with getting A's for the rest of my college career in undergrad, and even in grad school. But that being said, I still felt like I was hiding behind like a wall of I'm really not a smart student, and I don't know how I made it here, but I did, and I'm not deserving, right? I essentially told myself I'm not deserving, and that's so toxic and so just, it's not going to serve you. It's not going to help you. And so if you're doing that to yourself, I just want to share that because when I finally got to the point of like recognizing when I'm doing that, and I still to this day find myself occasionally falling back into that toxic mindset, but I'm really quick to snap myself out of it because I know now how important mindset is, and I actively work on it every single day. That is the only way I can show up and serve you as a CRNA, as a leader of CRNA School Prep Academy, as a mom, as a wife, is if I have a good mental mindset, I can be there for you. I can be there for others. And so I have to check myself before I wreck myself almost every single day. But I want to at least get you thinking about that now, because the sooner you start recognizing what you're doing to yourself, the better and more rewarding your life's going to be, because you're going to be happier, you're going to feel more fulfilled, and you will find more success. It's so funny how that works, because if you're looking for failure, you're going to find it. If you're looking for success, you're also going to find it. So look for success, and don't let the fear of failure be what you're looking for. Yeah, it can always happen, but so what? So can success. So why not try? Let's get back to that. Why not try? I told myself that one thing, I have to try. I have to try. And I knew if I didn't at least try, if I didn't try, I wouldn't pass or fail. I would for sure fail. If I didn't try, I would for sure fail. So I said, if I don't try, 100% failure. If I do try, well, now I got some odds, right? I'm gambling with myself. And what a better gamble than on yourself. Because the only way you truly fail, you guys, is if you just don't try. If you just stop trying, you're like, okay, I'm done. And I'm not saying to give up on something means you're a failure. It's definitely not. You're going to pursue something in your life on occasion where you're like, it's not what I thought it was going to be, and I'm not interested anymore. And that's okay. Because sometimes you don't know what you don't know until you get into it, right? And so I'm not saying that that's wrong or should be shameful, because it's not at all. But I equally think if you keep that desire and keep that passion, even after you start pursuing it and trying, you are doing yourself a disservice by stopping the trying, right? You need to keep trying, and you need to be willing to face failure over and over and over again until you succeed. And you will. That's the beauty of it, is that like the more attempts you make, the more odds you're giving yourself to succeed. And, you know, I'm speaking to you right now, my friend. I have heard so many inspirational stories from you, from CSBA listeners, of facing rejection 13 different times, if not more. Students coming from overseas with English as their second language, and yet you're still finding success. Was it on your first attempt, second, third, or fourth attempt? No. It might have been on your 8th attempt, but you still did it. Because you know why? You kept trying, and you kept getting gritty and figuring it out. You kept saying, well, I have to find a way. I'll find tools, resources, knowledge I didn't have before that's going to get me to where I want to go. Because that's the beauty of it. There's information out there. You just have to be willing to look for it and seek it out. And essentially that's why you're here. That's why you're listening to the podcast. So anyways, that's kind of like my soapbox story of you have to recognize the toxic language if you're doing it to yourself. Okay, let's kind of back up where I was. So I got into College of Nursing. I still face these limiting beliefs, right? Where I kind of was hiding behind this film of like, I'm really not that smart student. But yeah, I was doing really good. I did really good. Again, I got my GPA up from a 3.1 to 3.7. Like that's a giant leap. Just to get into nursing school, I got up to a 3 and a 3.5 to get into nursing school. So I don't care what classes I took. That's an amazing accomplishment. High pat on my back, right? I'm going to pat myself on the back. So anyway, so I continued on my nursing journey. And at that moment in time, my freshman in nursing school, I was a junior in college because, mind you, I had to apply my sophomore year and got in. So I was a junior in college. And at that time, I kind of just saw nursing as like, let's figure out a specialty, whether that's labor and delivery, whether that's renal, whether that's ICU, whether that's peds, whatever, oncology, I don't know. I kind of saw it as, let's figure out what my special sauce is, where do I want to be? And secretly, here's the thing. Secretly, I wanted to become a CRNA. Like in my deepest part of my brain, I knew I would thrive in it. And granted, I had not spent time shadowing. I just been researching it online quietly. And I had been in the OR and I'd shadowed, and I was like, I know I love the OR. I've been watching Discovery Health and the surgery since I was like 5 years old. You know, and so I knew I would thrive in that environment, and I knew I loved pathophysiology. I knew I loved pharmacology. So I knew it would be a good fit, but I equally was like, but that's the smartest of the smartest, right? Like that. And then, so that limiting belief kept taunting me, saying, yeah, you've accomplished a lot, Jenny, but you're still not good. You're still not good enough, right? And, you guys, it's so toxic. So anyways, long story short, I denied that feeling for a while. It didn't go away. Like, it stayed with me where I was like, I really want to become a CRNA, but I don't really know if I can, but I really want to. I don't know. So I was kind of torn, but I didn't tell anyone other than a few close friends and family. And one of those moments that I'll never forget because it stuck with me is I told you I met my now husband when I was 18 years old in college. And I went out to visit his family, and it wasn't probably the first visit. I don't remember honestly what point in time this visit happened, but it was definitely after I got a little more serious about CRNA. Like after I was like, no, I think I'm going to go for this. I actually told his parents that, and I forget, they asked me like, what do you want to do with your nursing degree? And I was like, well, I actually want to become a CRNA. And I remember his dad saying, my father-in-law now, saying, oh, well, Brian, you better hold on to this one. She's a keeper. And I remember being like, well, gosh, if I don't achieve it becoming a CRNA, am I going to be less desirable then? Like, and I remember kind of taking offense to it, not in a way that was like I was mad, but in a way that I kind of beat myself up, like, but what if you don't, Jenny? Then what? Then what are you going to be? You're just going to be dumb Jenny again, right? And so, like, I just remember having that toxic thought, and I remember recognizing it and being like, why am I letting that get to me? Like, yeah, I'm going to become a CRNA. And yeah, I am a keeper. Regardless of what I am, I'm a keeper. And so I kind of just put it back. Like I was just like, I'm going to do this. And so it was into my senior, it was now my true senior year, right? Because I did 5 years of undergrad because I didn't get in. So I'm officially in my senior year. mind you, my first year into the nursing school program, I took a job as a student nurse's aide, meaning like after you complete your first semester in nursing school, you qualify to become an SNA, which is a student nurse assistant. You don't have to take any classes, you just get to do it. And I was like, I might as well do this because that way I'm going to get exposure to different nursing specialties, talk to nurses, see what they like, don't like, etc., and just get more exposure into like what I'm actually getting myself into. Like, what am I actually doing with my life? Let's kind of figure that out. So I took that position, and holy moly, that was a hard position. But I did it, and I started on a peripheral vascular disease floor. I would occasionally rotate to an open heart unit, and I feel like every time I did, I had like a traumatic experience where I'd see a code or something like that. It was just like, why? Like, how often do they have codes up there? Probably not as often, but for whatever reason, when I would go up there, I would be involved in a code, and I was just like, oh, I don't know if I can even handle this. This is too scary. I was very overwhelming at the time, but during that time, it was, again, my junior year and my first year in nursing school, my junior year in college, I started kind of adapting the mindset of like, I have to try, right? I have to at least try for CRNA. But I knew in order to try, I had to fully believe it, which means I have to speak it, which means I have to own it, which means I have to be accountable, which means I got to freaking share with everyone, their brother. That's what I'm going to do. So I started becoming more vocal about becoming a CRNA. I started telling everyone that was my goal, even though there was a part of me that kind of hesitated a little bit because I was scared, right? Even so much so that I remember like right before I made a shift to the ICU to work as a nurse's aide, I started researching other career paths. I started researching becoming a PA. I researched AA. I don't even want to say those words, but I did because I was scared I wasn't going to make it, guys. Like, that's why I researched it, because I was like, is there another avenue? Because if there is, like, what if I don't get in? What would I do? What do PAs do? Would I want to be a PA? Like a nurse practitioner? Like, I just started researching other avenues because I was afraid. And so when I see this all the time in CRNA School Prep Academy, I have students who say, well, my backup plan is this, so I'm going to do it. And I'm still going to try for CRNA, but I'm going to do this backup plan. I'm like, you're essentially just not 100% committing to becoming a CRNA. If that's literally what it is. You're so afraid of failure that you're not 100% committing. And I'm telling you right now, because you're doing that, you're not going to give it the best try. You're not going to give it all your effort. You're giving half your effort here and half your effort here. So are you more likely to succeed? No, you're not. You're more likely to not succeed because you're not giving it your all. And so I want to stress that to you, how important it is. If you want CRNA, you have to put all your eggs in that basket and go for it and go again and again and again. And it really takes a lot of dedication and drive to stick with this path versus saying, I'm going to do a backup plan and then still do CRNA. I'm not saying it doesn't always work out. Sometimes it does, but I don't know. Like, I just don't think there's not a reason to do it. Just put it all, give it your all, and go for the gusto, right? Go for the gold, get what you want versus trying to divert your path. And then it's like you're just spreading yourself two different directions, and it's just not going to ever be as streamlined or as easy to achieve the goal if you're toying with two other ideas, right? So at that point, again, I was doing it too. But then I finally made the decision where I was like, if I'm going to go for this, just like when I decided to get straight A's, it was no turning back. It was all or nothing. Go big or go home, right? So I went big and said, nope, there's nothing else for me. This is all I want. I started shadowing again. And I had shadowed my senior year in nursing school in the ICU. And this was right around that time where I got that ICU rotation in nursing school. And I begged to be in the ICU. And I begged to get into the OR during this time. And luckily, I confided in my clinical one of the instructors. I confided in her that I was interested in CRNA. And this is what I knew I needed to do to get there. I needed shadow experience. I needed the ICU experience. And can she please help me achieve my goal? Like, this is really what I want. And she was incredibly supportive of me, thank goodness, and got me the shadow day, helped me get into the SICU for my ICU rotation in nursing school. And you guys, when I got into that shadow day, I lit up. I was like, yes, this is 100% what I want to do. I'm so excited. I can't even, I remember just being so excited that was going to be me someday. I remember thinking, I'm going to be you 5, maybe 6 years from now, but I'm going to be you. And just being like, I'm going to know how to do that. I'm going to know how to drop those drugs. And it was incredibly overwhelming. And to watch them drop these drugs really quick and push it and give it and being like, how do they even know what they're doing? But I remember being like, I'm going to do that. I'm going to learn and I'm going to do that. And it's not going to be scary because I'm going to know what I'm doing. And yeah, it was just really humbling because it was like watching something that you wanted so bad and just being starstruck with your jaw drop, oh my gosh, you're so cool. So that was kind of my experience when I went to the OR, and I knew at that moment, because of how kind of turned on I got, not to like totally be perverted, but just I was excited. I was lit up, right? I knew it was what I wanted to do. It was a passion. It was my desire. And so I stuck with that. And whenever I would feel overwhelmed or scared, or that fear would creep in, or Jenny, you're not smart enough, whatever, I would remember how that lit me up. I would remember being how excited I was, and how like I got goosebumps on my arms, like my hairy arms would stand up straight. I do have hairy arms, by the way. But it was so invigorating to feel that passion when I got scared, that I was like, you're gone. You're gone, fear. I got you. I'm going to keep doing this. There's no fear that's going to stop me from trying, right? I'm going to try. And I go back to that, I'm going to try. Like that's, whenever I feel like I can't do something, I have to always just say, I'm going to try. I'm going to try. And if I don't succeed, well, I'll learn from that failure, and then I'll try again, knowing more the next time, and then so on and so on and so on. And that's always served me well. And I've known that because it got me from never getting straight A's to getting straight A's to graduating with straight A's in nursing school to, it got me where I currently was. So I knew it wouldn't fail me now. And so anyways, that's kind of what I got into going into my senior year in nursing school. So at that moment, I decided to make a pivot and go into the medical ICU as a nurse's aide. And that was one of the best decisions I ever made. It was incredibly hard. It was a very hard position because, it's just a lot of manual labor work and stressful. But I did it, and it got me really engulfed in the ICU environment. It got me learning ICU information, talking to the nurses, kind of looking at, kind of like how they're handling it, what they're doing, et cetera, et cetera. And it really just got me kind of starting to think more like an ICU nurse, even though I was not actually a nurse. But also opened the doors to an ICU residency program. And then ultimately I took a position there as an actual nurse in the medical ICU. Now, medical ICU was not my first choice, meaning like I didn't really want to be in the medical ICU. I found it a very depressing unit, just sad and just full of death and suffering and pain. It was really hard, and it's probably one of the only times in my life that I've truly suffered from like a depression, because it was just, I hated all the death and suffering. I hated it. I liked the ICU part. I hated the death and I hated the suffering. It made me physically sick to see people suffer. So anyways, it just felt like, what am I doing? I'm coming here torturing people every day. This is awful. So that being said, it wasn't my first choice unit. I probably would have preferred something like an open heart unit or a SICU, but those were my people, meaning like I felt like they raised me. Like when I became a nurse's aide, those nurses on that unit were so incredibly powerful. They were like my work mothers and fathers. They were just so nurturing, and I knew by taking a position there, and plus they begged me like, Jenny, you're not going to leave us, are you? You're going to come here. And I'm like, I knew I would be okay there. I knew, despite it being a very hard unit to work on, that I'd had support, that I had people who genuinely cared about who I was and would support me in my career goals. So I took the position there, and I was incredibly happy I did. Was it hard? Oh my gosh, yeah. It was incredibly hard. I cried all the time. I cried more during my 3 years in a MICU nurse than I probably have most of my life, because it was that depressing for me. But I don't think I would have gotten through it if it wasn't for that staff. I definitely would not have. And would I have been happier in this SICU? Probably. But I remember thinking, like, when I would float down there, like, it was a much colder unit. It was more spaced out, bigger, and the staff was not nearly as nice and forgiving. And even, like, my girlfriend who worked down there, she would say, yeah, people here are not very nice. Like, I'm just happy I'm here in my little home where they're all just so loving and supportive. And, like, I feel like it was such a depressing unit that you kind of had to be that way to your coworkers. Otherwise, no one would make it. So it was actually, I don't know. I look back on that experience, and as hard as it was actually like one of the most rewarding, eye-opening experiences I've ever had in my life. So anyways, I worked there. And then, I kind of want to leave you with this. When I became serious about becoming a CRNA, I probably did what you're doing, which is looking at everything you have to do and getting overwhelmed, being like, how am I supposed to do this all? It was just a lot, right? But then what I knew, like what got me, again, to getting straight A's and to getting where I was, getting into the College of Nursing, is I took little consistent action, right? I took little consistent steps of doing things differently, figuring things out, trial and error, testing, figuring it out, looking things up, trying something new. And so I kind of adopted the same mindset as, this is just baby steps. Like, as long as you're doing one more thing to work towards your goal, just that one more thing. Doesn't have to do it. You don't have to do everything. Just one more thing, and being consistent with doing one more thing, you will eventually, it'll add up, it'll stack up. You will accomplish a lot over a period of time. I knew I needed time. I equally was going to get married after college. After college. I'm trying to remember how old I was. So that was a priority for me, not gunning it to grad school. Like, I knew I wanted to get married. I told my husband if he made me wait till after grad school that he'd buy me a bigger rock. So he was like, let's do it. But anyways, just joking aside. But yeah, so we got married. I just wasn't in a hurry. I knew I had to take the GRE, the CCRN. Not that I wasn't. I mean, it still felt like a pretty good clip to go to apply to CRNA school after 2 years. It felt like a pretty good, like I had a lot to do. Now, mind you, that stinking GRE was like, because again, historically, I was not a good standardized test taker. I struggled. I didn't get into Ohio State my first year because my ACT and SAT scores were so low. I had to essentially petition, and my mom actually called and fought for me to get into Ohio State because my scores were not what they wanted. I don't even know how she did it. My mom's awesome, but she fought for me to get into Ohio State because again, I don't do well on standardized tests. I just never have. So I had to take that test more than once, and I had to study for over 8 months to take that test. The first 3 months I studied, I didn't do well, and I studied 3 more months and then took it. And so maybe it was more like 6 months. I don't remember. It was like 6 or 8 months, right around there. But I had to pay for tutoring, and I wasn't afraid to do so because honestly, I had so many tutors in my life up until that point that tutor for me just felt like a no-brainer. Like I was like, yeah, I need tutoring because I do. I just need it, and I adopted that that's okay. I got tutored all through my grade school, and then in college when I needed to get straight A's, I went to every TA hour. I went to a writing center. I essentially looked for ways to find tutors in college because that's what I needed. So it wasn't really a question for me. I was like, I'm going to pay for a tutor because that's what I need. So I did that, and it made a huge difference. But that being said, when I first applied to CRNA school, I barely missed the minimum GRE score to apply, and they rejected my application. So my first application, reject, right? And I called and I was like, but I have everything else. Like but I look, right? And they're like, nope, you don't meet that requirement. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. But I meet everything else like over and beyond. And they're like, nope. So I was like, oh, well, that stinks. So there was that my first experience. And then the second experience, I actually got an interview. I retook the GRE, got a higher score. My next application, I got an interview. And I'm like, oh, I could get in. I got an interview. Like, whoa, this could really happen. And so I go into the interview. I freaking almost got there late. Yeah, and almost hit the program director's car. I think I've shared this one other time, but I was getting lost. I couldn't find, I was going through this parking garage, and I'm like, I can't find where I'm supposed to go. And I was starting to freak out, right? Because I was going to be late. And I was like, I can't even freaking be late for my freaking CRNA school interview. So I'm driving through this parking garage. I turn and go to the wrong direction, guys. Like I legit turn the wrong way down a parking garage and go the other way that I'm not supposed to go. And then I see an open spot and I'm like, I'm parking. I'm going to figure out how to get in that spot. So I gun it and I turn it into this spot. And I just inches from clipping the car next to me. And of course I back out like 100 times and readjust and park. And then when I get out and I look at the license plate of the car I literally almost hit, it said PhD CRNA. And I'm like, oh, well, that would have been really bad. Like, I definitely would not have gotten into this program if I had, hit the program director's car. So that was kind of funny. So anyways, I go in for this interview. I think that kind of frazzled me a little bit because I was just like, oh my God. Anyways, so don't do that. Get in there. That interview didn't go so well. It just didn't go well. And, it was lack of probably me being aware of, I thought I prepared a lot. I thought I did. But it's like what you only know what you know. You don't know what you don't know. And so you walk into it and you're like, well, I think I'm ready. And then you're like, no, I'm not. So that was my experience. And didn't get in. I was like, well, that hurt. That was upsetting. But I equally knew I had more opportunities, right? So I was on to the next one. And I applied. I got an interview. And so I had another interview, and this was, my first interview was like in April, and then my next interview was like in October-ish time. So there was some space between the two, right? My first rejection was in January, interview April, and then bombed, and then interview October of the same year. And then that one, at the time I got rejected from the first one, I reached out, got some more connections, which I speak to all the time, talked to a current student, got some feedback, got some tips. And then I don't think I did great. Don't get me wrong. That interview was not like, I aced it. I did not get offered a spot on the spot. So that was not me. I definitely didn't get everything right. I definitely made some mistakes. But I did good enough. And I got in. I got offered a spot. And I was super excited about that. And I was like, yes. So it worked out. But I guess like I just want to share my story, the fact that it wasn't all smooth sailing. It just comes back to like, you got to just keep trying. And if you don't have the result that you want, you got to figure out why. And look for ways to improve. And that's ultimately what it always comes down to, is looking for ways to improve, figuring out why that interview didn't go well, right? Questioning and thinking about how can I improve better next time. And literally when I got feedback on that was simply my interview skills. Like that's the feedback I got, was my interview skills needed to be touched up. Like that was the majority of what my feedback was. So had I had CRNA School Prep Academy and mock interviews, I would have been like, sign me up, like for 10, no, at least a couple. So it was overall, I think the struggles in your life, whatever it may be, and some of you have a lot more than that. Like I feel sometimes and I do this to myself too, where I'm like, man, Jenny, you didn't really struggle at all. Like you've had it so good. And I really have. I'm incredibly grateful and honored to be where I'm at. Because I am equally touched by how many of you have just huge life events that happen, whether that's to you or your close family members, and yet you still persevere. I'm getting goosebumps even thinking about it, because the stories that you guys have shared with me are just like life-changing, and please keep them coming. Like when you have, it doesn't matter, even if it's straightforward story, you're equally unique in your journey to become a CRNA. So when you share those stories, it inspires someone else to do what I hope I inspire you to do, which is to take action. So if you please keep me in mind, share your story, reach out to me on Instagram at CRNA School Prep Academy, send me your story. If you're part of CRNA School Prep Academy, post it in the Facebook group and the forum. We would love to hear your story, because we share that. I know you know that if you've been following me. I love to share our students' stories, because it's so inspiring to read someone else's journey and how they got where they did. It really pushes other people to take a chance on themselves, which is ultimately the goal of this podcast, is to have you take a chance on yourself. It's the best bet you will ever take. So I hope you guys found this helpful and just encouraging. You have to start believing in yourself. You have to shift. If you're dealing with toxic mindset, as I know I was at one point in my life, and don't get me wrong, it's like one of those things where your mindset just doesn't get fixed, right? You don't just have a magic button you click and you're like, oh, I'm good. I will never suffer from poor mindset ever again. I wish, but it doesn't happen that way. The way you get good at mindset is just being like aware of the fact that every day of every second of every day, you have a thought and you have an emotion with that thought. And those emotions and thoughts cause a visceral reaction in your body, and they change your thought process. So if you control how you feel about something, even if it isn't going the way you want, you can then change the outcome, because you're going to think and feel differently. You're going to do something differently. You're going to take different action than if you become scared or fearful. If you don't feel that fear or scared, you're more likely not going to stop. You're not going to freeze. But that all comes from how you think and perceive, and the types of emotions that itself provokes. And it sounds totally like you're like, well, it's just over my head. And it is. It's a lot, and it takes time. And like I said, it's something that you just have to be cognizant of day in, day out. I promise you, if you start adopting that right now, you'll look back a year from now and be like, I am in such a better place. Like it takes a long runway to get there. And so does CRNA school. So if you're not a part of CRNA School Prep Academy, I highly encourage you to take that leap. That's like one thing, you guys, that when you commit to becoming a part of CRNA School Prep Academy, that is you saying, I am committed. I am doing this. I'm going to be loud and proud. I'm going to become a CRNA. And so I equally know that when students become a part of our academy and part of our community, that they will be pushed to action. They will be pushed to keep challenging themselves, to face their fears, to get over the hurdles, to learn how to adjust and adapt and navigate and pivot. That's what we're here for. We're here to help you so you find that success. Just the way that, again, I was faced with two options: to go home and live with my parents, or to figure it out and stay in college where I wanted to be. It took a ton of me twisting and turning, asking, looking for resources to do that. I am right here for you. CRNA School Prep Academy is here for you as a resource. I want to help you. So again, if you're a part of CSPA, I'm proud of you. And if you're not, I implore you to just come check us out. So you guys all have a wonderful day. Thank you so very much for tuning in, and I will see you next week. All right, bye-bye. Hey, future CRNA, as always, I appreciate you and your loyalty. Thank you so very much for tuning in this week. I'd love to hear from you, so screenshot this episode and share it to your IG stories with your biggest takeaway.
Don't forget to tag me at CRNA School Prep Academy so I can personally thank you. Be sure to head over to CRNASchoolPrepAcademy.com to check out our blog and gather free resources to help you along your CRNA journey. Stay strong, and I'll see you next week.